Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Immigrant Magazine Weekly. We have a great holiday season show for you today featuring one of the world's greatest sommeliers. We're going to share secrets of wine with you like you've never heard before. I know some of you are hearing the term sommelier for the first time, but you love drinking wine. So this will be a show for you to pay attention to so you don't pair them wrongly with the wrong food and so on and so forth. However, before we begin the show, I want you to take the time now, if you haven't subscribed, to subscribe, hit the like button, and ring the notification bell so that YouTube will notify you every time we release new content. Now, if you're one of those who is always confused about choosing great wine or what wine goes with what, this is the show that will bring you every resource that you need. So without further ado, let's get to it. Let me introduce you to Mr. Jon McDaniel, the founder and CEO of Second City Soil, Chicago-based wine consultancy with the mission of growing Chicago's wine culture through winery, restaurant marketing, and education partnerships. He is the winner of Food Wine Magazine Sommelier of the Year for 2018 and one of Wine Enthusiast over 40 Tastemakers in 2017. Jon is recognized as one of the top wine professionals in the USA and beyond. So, welcome to the show, one of the world's best sommeliers. So, let's welcome Jon McDaniel to the show. Hi, Jon.
Hi, Pamela. How are you? Happy to be with you today.
Oh, my pleasure. Just so you know, I have a glass of wine right here with me.
You're much more prepared than I am. After a week in California of rosé and all sorts of stuff. Today's called recuperate and hydrate before the Thanksgiving weekend coming up.
Well, let's see if I can keep up with you. So first of all, I wanted to know, I was curious, Jon McDaniel, what's the heritage? Is it Irish?
Yeah, so it's part Scottish, part Irish, depending on what time of history they kind of were fighting with each other. So a very interesting background there on one side, and then German on the mom's side. So interesting, but just general Western Europe.
Okay, sounds much like it. I went to Catholic
Yeah,
school, so I met a lot of people with those names. So I pretty much thought I got it this time, but that's all. That's all right.
yeah.
So I wanted to know from you. I just not too long ago, earlier this year, I watched a movie titled Uncorked. I don't know if you've seen that movie. It's about a young man who wants to become a sommelier. Am I pronouncing it correctly? Is it sommelier? Is that
Yep.
the pronunciation?
Yeah.
And I was so mesmerized by it. And then, so when I saw what you were doing with Wolf, I was like, oh, wow. I don't know that many people know what a sommelier is, because when you go to a nice, fine restaurant, you eat food, what is a sommelier really?
Certainly. So, sommelier, the word, the term is just French for wine person or wine professional. The first sommeliers, in existence were actually kind of the taste testers, and they were the ones to pack the mules of the king. So, not necessarily the most glamorous job, but just kind of like a worker in the court, so that if the food or wine was poisoned, usually the sommelier is the first one to go.
Oh, no.
That's how that started out, and over time it's developed into definitely something more. It's just being a wine professional, most likely in a restaurant, but I think more and more as the internet and all sorts of different ways that people can learn about wine. It's not just in a restaurant anymore. You have sommeliers that are educators and in retail stores that work for importers and for wineries. So really just it's a fancy way to say wine professional.
And you chose just that. And
Yeah.
did you grow up wanting to become a sommelier? Because the movie I watched, he wanted to become a sommelier. And I think he went to sommelier school or something like that. You should watch the
Hmm.
movie on Netflix. Well,
Yeah, it's a great movie, and my friend Dylan Proctor, it was the kind of like expert consultant for that film. If you watch the documentary Somm, which came out maybe I think 2012, he was one of the four that were testing to be a master sommelier, and so that's really about 8 years ago where the profession took a turn to be more well known. The documentary series is on Netflix, and
Yeah.
it's one of the hardest exams to get to. And there's several levels of sommeliers, but just to be a master sommelier is such a professional title that's one of the most hardest to achieve in any profession in the world.
Yes. Yes. It's amazing that you know the movie I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So what does it take to become a sommelier? Is it a career that, is trendy now and that more and more people should look into? Because for us, my audience is predominantly immigrant. So when they come here,
Mhm.
we're looking for myriad opportunities. So depending on who you stumble on determines and really shapes your destiny in terms of career choices. So would sommelier be one of those for someone that loves wine? Do you have to love wine? What is it to become one?
Yeah, certainly. The love of wine is very similar to a sommelier and a chef are very similar kind of professions. Of you can love food, but that doesn't mean that you should become a chef. You can love wine, but not necessarily that you should become a sommelier. It's the thing about the profession is that as you look kind of behind me, this is my coat closet here.
Yes.
This is wine from all over the world. And every vintage or every year is very different than the last year. The laws are continuously changing on what can go into wine, how it can be labeled, the flavor profiles, the costing, pairings of food. It's in different languages. So, and it's also, you have to remember that, a wine professional, their goal is to share the story of a farmer or a winery or a vineyard. It's not about me, it's about the wine. And so it's really being able to share the stories, having a really great memory of all the bottles you tasted, all the different facts, a passion about geography as well, and viticulture and soils. There's a lot that goes into it. And, but there are also a lot of opportunities in the business as well. So you don't have to be an expert in wine to be in the business. So, if you are from an area that, wine is part of the culture that you grew up in, you have a lot of personal attachment to the stories. And so that could be certainly of interest. And also, not just for a sommelier for wine, but, the sommelier can also, can extend into beer as well. A beer sommelier is called a cicerone, or you can be really into spirits and cocktails. And so, the growth of alcohol in general creates a lot of opportunities, in our business, and they're all kind of intertwined. Sometimes in a restaurant, sometimes not, but it has to go. It starts from there, and then really just understanding what your consumer is about. You see also randomly a lot of people that are in pharmaceutical sales that will then go into wine sales and vice versa, because you can kind of it's all about your selling technique. And then you just learn about the product. So there's certainly opportunities for people that are interested to learn more and then to be a profession.
Thanks for the clarification because I thought
Yeah.
sommelier was really about wines. Now, I wouldn't suggest an alcoholic become a sommelier because
Yeah, it's difficult, 'cause that's and also I wish that a lot of my life before COVID and all that was a lot of travel and a lot of visiting wineries and having 4-hour lunches. And so it's you have to pace yourself and understand the difference between tasting alcohol and drinking alcohol,
tasting
and then also
swallow.
yeah, and then also, it's for your diet as well. It's not a very good profession either, because you're surrounded by food all the time, and so you have to, it's all about moderation. So if you're focused on the profession and not the fact that you can technically drink for a living, you'll be good.
You'll be good. So
Yeah.
let's talk about what you just the event that you just had with legendary Wolfgang Puck. You had a
Yes.
special virtual Thanksgiving rosé event where you called a perfect pairing, where you
Hmm.
offered top rosé from Chateau de Berne and Ultimate Provence. Was that what it was?
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that event and what this really was about.
Yeah, so it all started with, the fact that when you think of rosé as a category, and so, rosé, and here's from one of the one, rosé is pink wine at first of all. And when people think of this pink wine, they think of, drinking it by the beach and drinking it by the pool and patios and during the summer. And, if you go on Instagram and you look at rosé all day hashtag, It's a bunch of beautiful people drinking rosé, and then they stop around, October 15th when it starts to get cool. The goal of for both Chateau de Bern and for Ultimate Provence and for Chef Puck was to showcase how rosé, especially from Provence, is such a perfect pairing for Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving, you have turkey and sides and desserts and stuffing and all sorts of different stuff, and you can either have 15 different types of wine on the table to match 1-to-1 with everything, or you have something like a beautiful Provence rosé that can pair with everything. And why that is, so if you look at how a rosé tastes from Provence, it's strawberries and fresh herbs and all the things you kind of get from a light red wine.
Okay.
But it's also the structure of it is very similar to a white wine. So it's crisp, it's acidic, you kind of get the zippiness on the side of your tongue there that reminds you of Pinot Grigio or Sauvignon Blanc. So it's kind of like Goldilocks of wine. It's all right, red wine drinkers, you're going to give it a thumbs up. White wine drinkers, you'll be happy too. And that way you can have kind of one wine on the table that goes well for everybody. So that was really the mission behind our partnership with Chef Puck, is really showcasing how one, the thing about wine and the thing about being a sommelier is that at the end of the day you're trying to not mess up the chef's food. And we have a chef like Wolfgang Puck who's creating, like, you don't have to worry about him. He's going to create amazing dishes. I luckily got to taste some of them. Every bite was amazing. And so the wine aspect of that is just to really showcase how recipes like what Chef Puck creates, Provence rosé, can be great with that.
That's awesome. So I have a question. Some people think that the more expensive the wine, the better quality. Is that a myth?
There are some parallels to that, but you also have to remember that the cost of a wine has to do with a lot of factors, both in the vineyard, where it comes from, the same way that a studio apartment in Manhattan is going to be much more expensive than a studio apartment in Omaha, Nebraska. Where it locates from, its origin, the land is more expensive in some of your iconic regions of wine, and the grapes that you grow sometimes cost more, the packaging. So there are all sorts of things that go into that, the same way that a BMW costs more than another 4-door car for about the same size, but the name BMW goes into that. So that's one thing about Provence that's so great, is that one, rosé is, instead of making a red wine out of this bottle, or we'll bring into Ultimate Provence as well, instead of making a red wine, which takes many months to create, all of those months is time equals money. You can create something that this is a $24.99 style of wine that, if it were to be made into a red wine, would be more expensive. So cost doesn't necessarily always mean that it's going to be better. And the one thing to always remember, when it comes to wine, is that if you like it as the consumer, drink it. That's all that matters. Because, if I tell you something is good and you disagree with me, and you want to drink something that you like and I disagree with you and say that it's terrible, at the end of the day, I don't have to drink it. You get to drink it and we both win. Wine is great because you can always be right. And there are very few things in our lives where we can be right, and that's okay with everybody,
Yeah, you know what? I'm glad you said that. However, if I'm sitting at a dinner table and I'm being served a steak, for instance, but I like my rosé or I like my white wine, am I out of place?
No, so part of to remember of pairings is one of two things. One is look at a bottle of rosé, or as ingredients in a dish. So this is strawberries and fresh herbs and blood orange. If you were to add that to the dish, would it make it better or would it make it worse? So Chardonnay flavors, like, is appley. Would you add apples to a steak? Probably not. But if you like apples on a steak, that could work. The other part of it is about the weight of the wine. A light white wine like Sauvignon Blanc or even rosé is crisp and very fresh and easy. A steak is quite heavy, it's quite full. And so when you bite the steak, sometimes those things where the wine will get lost, where it's not heavy enough to go with it. That's why, Cabernet, for example, goes so well with steak, because it's so full and rich, and the steak is full and rich. So there's that part of it. But at the same time, I have been in restaurants and served very expensive high-end Cabernets with very light, delicate fish, because that's what the guest likes.
Yes.
And they loved it. And at the end of the day, I have to remember that they're the ones that signed the bill. And so they enjoyed it. That's what they wanted. I worked for a weekend in Malibu at Nobu, the famous sushi restaurant, and Japanese businessmen and high-end Cabernet and delicate fish is like a match made in heaven for them. Awesome, good for them. So that meant more rosé for me in the back that I could drink. So that's the helpful part. So it's all about personal preference.
So if I wanted to do, for someone that wants to do a nice, elegant dinner, and you have the fish, you have the meat, you have different assorted. What are the typical must-haves?
Yeah, so look at, when you have such an array like that, kind of look at, if you are the host of the party, because there are thousands of different types and producers and bottles of wine, make it something that is personal to you. Maybe if you're creating a dinner party and you have traveled to Italy before, get a couple of Italian wines that maybe from a place that you got to share that with, or, I've got to spend a lot of time in Provence. And so, anytime that you can transport yourself to the south of France and create a little thematic dinner out of that, to a beautiful roasted chicken and some oysters from the sea and all that. So it really kind of all depends on you as a host, and thinking about, okay, well, I know that if my boss is coming over and he only drinks Pinot Noir, yeah, it probably would help to get a bottle of Pinot Noir. And so look at that part of it of, so much of why we love wine is the social aspect of it, is the enjoyment. And are there better pairings than others? Sometimes, certainly. And that's why I think people, sometimes don't think of rosé with Thanksgiving, because they think of it as only a one time of year type of wine. So really kind of pushing yourself and be like, I'm going to try something new, and try something that, maybe I didn't think of before. And hey, it may turn out to be the best pairing you've ever had. And that I think is what Chef Puck and I kind of came up with in our series last week.
Yeah, that's right. I'm having a Pinot Noir, by the way.
Wonderful.
So my next question for you was, what are the trends right now?
Yeah, so in the wine world, what's interesting, and a lot of the trends are tied to, obviously, our current times and COVID and all of that. And if you look at the trends and statistics, is that we're drinking more, and because we have more time to, and all those different things. So we're alcohol sales, wine sales, they're up. At this point, which normally in times of crisis, we tend to drink more. But what we're finding in those kind of trends is that people are also drinking more safe. Okay. So, if you go to a wine shop, maybe you can be convinced by that wine shop to drink something and try something new. Now, because you're ordering maybe online or maybe going to the grocery store, you don't have the opportunity necessarily to try the wine as much. So what we're finding is that people are drinking, like, if you love Chardonnay, you're probably just going to continue to order more Chardonnay. You're not going to try the next big thing. And so, the trend is kind of going back to traditions. So that's when you look at, all right, what are the classic areas of the wine world? So, Champagne for sparkling wine, Napa Valley for Cabernet, Provence for rosé. I mean, when you look at for pink wine, for rosé wine, Provence is the, you go to Belgium for chocolate and Omaha for steaks. You go to Provence for rosé. And so that's really kind of our trends, is that they want to drink comfortable, because, we're all focused on our personal finances right now. And so if you're going to spend $15, $20, $25 for a bottle of wine, whatever your budget is, you want to kind of make sure that it's good, that you're going to enjoy it. And so, going something a little bit off the wall, or, from a place that's maybe not familiar, we're not really seeing a lot of that right now.
Yeah, that's interesting that you mentioned if you wanted a certain steak, you go to Omaha and stuff, and if you wanted certain kind of wine, you go to certain places. I visited many years ago a wine cave, and we did some wine tasting, and the French swear that they have the best. I'm not challenging that. However, how about our California wines? How about, does good wine always equate to foreign?
No, and so what's kind of interesting now is that, there is, I would say, at more times than ever in the history of the wine world, is that you can find really great wine everywhere, the same way that you can find bad wine everywhere. And
Okay.
what is interesting about the wine world now is that, for example, every state in America now has a commercial winery. So you can get wine from Alaska and from Florida and from Virginia and everywhere. Most, countries within a certain, if you look at the latitude,
Mhm.
if you're kind of within there, you're producing wine. I mean, Brazil is producing more wine than ever, more wine in different, African countries other than South Africa. Morocco is producing wine. As global warming kind of changes, you're starting to see, wine from Sweden. So, you know, what is different now than in the past with, great wine or good wine from everywhere is that, a winemaker from Sweden, maybe has spent some time in the United States or in France being trained in how to make wine. And so their idea of, it's a more global world, we get to travel more. And so winemakers have more global experience. So, good wine is better than ever now, and you can get really great quality from really anywhere in the world. It again, it kind of goes back to personal preference. And why the French say that they have the best wine is that they've been doing it for the longest.
Right.
In California, the wine industry in California really didn't come into global respect until the 70s. And so that kind of reputation is very different. Of Americans like to drink French wine, the French don't drink American wine, and so the availability of those things as well. So we in the United States have just embraced things from all over the world the same way that we do with food and with people. And where you travel to France or to Italy or to Australia, they're very much about their own wines there, versus in the US we have access to everything, and that's can be great, but also that can make it more difficult because we have too many options probably.
Yes, absolutely. That's great information because sometimes you're on a budget and you think you have to buy this expensive bottle of French wine, whereas you could be consuming your locally brewed wine, you know? So that's really,
Yeah, and that's one thing, kind of as I alluded to before. There are some good values from France, but the kind of iconic regions that produce wine in France, Bordeaux, Burgundy, Champagne, also there's a price tag because of the name
there you
of the location. And so when I'm trying to, if I I love French wine, if I'm trying to buy wine from France, I look to other areas, and mostly in the south, because the south produces great red wines in Languedoc or rosés from Provence. They're still incredible values for what you get out of it.
Yes, that's amazing. So you are a professor, adjunct professor, you teach wine at Roosevelt University, you hospital, what is it? Hospitality management at Roosevelt University.
I
Is
do.
it in line with all of this? And so is it a subject that someone could pick as a choice when going to college?
Yeah, certainly. So, it's a growing, profession to be in the hospitality world, and
Yeah.
that's kind of a broad term for, if you want to be in restaurant management or in hotels or casinos or catering, all the things related to what hospitality really means.
Yes.
It is obviously, tourism is growing, all that around the world, especially here in the United States. So more universities are, creating programs for that. Sometimes it's a subsector of the business school. Roosevelt, which is a city campus in downtown Chicago, has an amazing hospitality program
Okay.
that is part of that. So if you want to, get a major in hospitality management, there's a class that you take as a requirement. It's called beverage. It's and so I teach that class.
Mhm.
So all the students run through there, and you learn about wine, beer, spirits, coffee, tea, how to write a wine list, why vodka and tequila are different. It just gives you all the kind of tools to, if you want to be a hotel manager one day, and a guest asks you like, well, what's in a gin and tonic, that you have an idea about what that is.
Yes. And especially I asked that question because now with COVID-19, but you just mentioned that, people are consuming more wine. I would have thought
Mm-hmm.
that, maybe how has the industry been affected for someone that will be considering this opportunity?
Yeah, it's definitely a struggle. I mean, if you look at restaurants around the country are kind of the one category of gatherings that certainly has been picked on. Of it's amazing that you're not allowed to have people inside restaurants right now, but yet you can have 1,000 people in Costco. And so that's not to get
Oh, yeah,
political,
I'm
but
from Costco. I get my wine from there.
yeah, and so that's it's difficult because the restaurant industry are vastly independent business owners that are every day restaurant margins of profit are very very small. So you need every opportunity and every guest to be able to make money off of that. And so that's now during COVID times and a lot of restaurants are closing. I've actually been part of a team that we founded a charity to help wine professionals called the United Sommeliers Foundation to be able to help them because they're out of work. Who knows when the sommelier in a restaurant will come back, as a profession in these difficult times. So yeah, the hospitality industry, tourism, cruise ships, hotels, all of that because of lack of travel has certainly taken a huge hit, billions and billions of dollars. And so it's a difficult time, but that is something about our society that it will always come back. It's just now we want to do it safely, and we really don't know when that's going to be. So whether that's coming with a vaccine or just with time, it will take some time for hotels and restaurants and winery tourism and all that to come back. But that's why it's great to be able to talk about this with you and all that stuff too. So.
It's my pleasure, really. So
Mhm.
someone like you or any other sommeliers, the services, is it like a service that you render that someone can call you up or find you somehow, or how does that work if you're a sommelier? How do you get?
Yeah, a lot of you've seen a lot of sommeliers that maybe they were working in a restaurant that their restaurant is closed now. It's difficult to get back to work that. So you've started to see a lot of sommeliers around the country creating their own small business opportunities to host virtual tastings for corporations or for consumers. I partner with a company called the Supper Share that they host virtual tastings. I feel like I live on Zoom sometimes and doing wine tastings for companies and getting to share about wine. And in normal times 10 people could get together and have a wine tasting on their own. But now especially with the holidays coming up, you can join someone in Seattle and Florida and Chicago all on the same place. We get you all the same wines, and then you can learn about something all together. So certainly the virtual aspect of the wine business and for sommeliers definitely shifting, and it's all about the creativity that that individual has to be able to say, hey, you know what, we have to shift. We have to find ways to, there's still a ton of wine to be had. Consumers are still buying wine. How do you educate them? How do you share the stories, of farmers and that with people? And that's by and large been virtual so far.
Yeah, thank you so much, John. So for those who talk about your foundation that's helping sommeliers and during these hard times, how can they find you and get some help?
Yeah, certainly. So it's United Sommeliers Foundation.org or on social media, United Somms, SOMMS. That's, we've raised almost $1 million thus far to help out wine professionals. And, that's people in restaurants and retail. And if you're a distributor, basically the core people on the ground that share the stories of wine. And so, I fortunately been lucky enough that, I have great partners and great opportunities, based off of, some of the kind of accolades that I've received and those of, not everyone has that. And so people that are trying to get into the business, trying to get into the industry, it takes a while. And so it's just, never say no to an opportunity. My kind of tagline of my life is, I never say no to a cup of coffee.
Yes.
All the things that come from just random connections, especially in the wine world, is very small. You can, be working in New Zealand tomorrow if you really wanted to, and all those things. So, just trying to create those opportunities. And I'm lucky enough to be able to, you know, there was only one person that got to go and talk about rosé with Wolfgang Puck, and that happened to be me this time. But
I
there are a
know.
lot of opportunities for chefs to partner with wine people, and whether that's virtual cooking and wine demonstrations. But what's great about the hospitality business, about the restaurant business, is that we all really try to support each other. And so, being creative as possible about how I can bring in other people into the conversation. And so, what Chef Puck does with his organization is, really been helping a lot of people out. And the fact that we are able to partner and, talk about, rosé and Thanksgiving is pretty great. And especially with everything going on.
So are you open to someone wanting to reach out to you, ask questions? Is there contact, email, something they can reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So feel free to, share that through your channels. Easiest way to track me down is probably on Instagram. It's McVino82. That's the great thing about being a McDaniel is that you can be McVino at the same time, which is awesome. So yeah, McVino82, just shoot me a message anytime. But yeah, if you Google Jon McDaniel wine, Jon with no H, I'm probably the first thing that's going to come up, and you can track me down one way or another.
That's amazing. Last tip for the holiday season, Jon.
It's especially with this week coming up of it's okay that we're not all together. I know that we're all worried what's going to happen with Thanksgiving and all that. So drink what you like, eat what you like. That's what it's all about. And if you can, continue to reach out to family and friends, whether virtually, and discover something like, for me, you would never think of rosé and Thanksgiving, but try it out. That's the fun part about it. Of if not this Thanksgiving, then when? And the great thing about a wine like that is that you can be in the south of France through a glass of wine. You can't travel there today, but if you can do it through a glass of wine, that's what we're all trying to just get out of our houses, and you can do it at least in your mind.
Well, thank you so much for giving me permission to drink my favorite wine, because I really like the rosés. They're kind of sweet. I like them, and I'm constantly being told, oh, girls like white wines and rosés and everything, and guys like the red wines and so on and so forth. But you say drink up what you like, right?
Absolutely.
So
There's a whole movement of brosé as well. So real men drink pink. That's what we say. So drink what you like. That's all that you mean. Yeah, absolutely. If you like it, then enjoy it. Drink up safely and happily. And happy holidays to you, Pamela. And thank you so much for connecting, and to all your viewers, happy holidays as well.
Same to you, Jon, and enjoy. That's all.
Cheers.
Thank you, and we'll be in touch.
Sounds great.
Thank
Cheers.
you. Take care. Bye-bye. We've come to the end of our show. Thank you so very much for joining me today. I would love to hear what you think about our discussion. So please share your thoughts in our comment section, or send me an email to publisher@immigrantmagazine.com. Now be sure to follow me on Twitter and Instagram @Anchang, and like us on Facebook, The Immigrant Magazine. See you next time on The Immigrant Magazine Weekly.